Next, we're delighted to welcome Hassan Tirmizi, an organisational design and development leader with more than 20 years of experience helping complex organisations turn strategy into sustainable performance. In this session, he'll challenge the idea that agility alone is enough and share why designing for coherence is the key to thriving under pressure. I'll put my teeth back in and welcome Hassan Tirmizi to the summer series. Hello, Hassan. How are you? Well, we have no sound, but we'll see if we can rectify that.
Hey, Matt. How are you? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, no, thank you. I remember us talking about this a few months ago now, so it's great that the time is finally here. I will leave you to it, and I will speak to you when you're done.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us from around the world. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I'd like to start by thanking Matt, Martha, Amy, and the entire team of Inspire Workplaces. I would just like to say that what an incredible job that you're doing. So let's dig into it. I'll just start with a simple question for our audience, and that is that how do you know whether an organization is truly well designed? Is it when the business is growing? Is it when the customers are happy, or maybe when everyone seems to be uh, busy? So, what is the measuring criteria? Or is it when the organization comes under pressure? Because in my experience, pressure reveals the success that is often hidden from every eye. So it is when priorities collide. It is when the market shift. It is when technologies are disrupted, or when uncertainty increases. That when we discover how well the organization is really designed. So it comes to the operating model of how the organization is working. Uh, for the past decade, the answer has sounded something like become more agile, move more faster, flatter structures, empowering teams, accelerate decisions. And to be fair, agility has helped many organizations become more responsive. But here's what I find interesting. As organizations have become faster, organizations have become more complicated. Leaders tell me that attending more meetings than ever before. Employees tell us that decision making feels very slow. Teams are working incredibly hard, yet execution often feels fragmented. Everyone is moving, but not always in the same direction. So that made me question something else. What if speed was never the objective in the first place? What if the real objective was coherence? Because organizations really struggle simply because they move too slow. More often, they are struggling because people, decisions, priorities, and governance stop them from moving together. And so that's what I'd like to explore with you today. Why coherence and not the speed may become one of the defining capabilities of high performing organizations. So let's be clear. I'm not arguing against, let's say, agility. Organization absolutely needs to be adaptable. Markets change, customer change, technology change. The world isn't slowing down, um, but somewhere along the way we have started equating speed with effectiveness. We've become so focused on moving fast that we have stopped asking more important questions, like, are we actually moving together? Think about an organization you're in. There are many transformation programs, there are many cross-functional initiatives, there are many stakeholders, more technology, more data, more meeting, more decisions. Yet the conversation I have with many executives sounds remarkably similar. Why does everything still take so long? Why do decision keeps coming back to leadership? Why are our best people consistently firefighting? So does that sound familiar to you? Here's the thing: pressure doesn't create the problem. Pressure actually exposes the problems within the organization. So when the business is stable, talented people uh, compensate. Managers make exceptions. Leaders step in. People rely on relationships instead of the process. The organization keeps moving forward. But when the pressure increases, whether it's rapid growing, AI adoption, restructuring, or economical uncertainty, those hidden weaknesses become impossible to ignore. The issue isn't actually capability. The issue is actually the organization can no longer rely on individual effort to compensate for the weaknesses of the system. That is why I believe the conversation needs to evolve. The challenge is no longer about becoming more agile, it's to remain coherent with um, sorry. So the challenge is no longer to become more agile. It's remaining coherent as complexity increases. So, what exactly is being exposed? So, I think we have spent years for designing what I call an invisible, the visible organization. We debate about structures, about reporting lines, about job titles, about operating models, about policies, governance forums, and every one of those things matter. But organization don't execute through the organization chart as a whole. They execute through decision. That is how it really works, through relationships, through trust, through collaboration, through influence. And that is what I call an invisible organization. Now, it's the network of connections that determine whether work flows naturally or gets trapped into unnecessary complexity. When the visible organization or the invisible organization reinforce each other, execution feels almost effortless. Decision happens where they should. Team solve the problems together. Leadership spend more time shaping the future than resolving day-to-day operational issues. But when these two worlds drift apart, organization becomes accumulatively something that I call organization debt. So, uh, just like financial debt, it builds gradually. Every unclear decision creates decision debt. Every unnecessary approvals create governance debt. Every workaround creates process debt. Every capability gap that leaders compensate on for creating a capability debt. At first, you hardly would notice it. The talented people carry on with their work, managers absorb it all, leaders step in. The organization appears to be functioning very fine until one day the debt becomes too large. That is why so many leaders tell me that they are overwhelmed. Not because that the leadership has become harder or there's a new complexity in the leadership formula, but because the organization has transferred into a complexity onto the leaders. The leaders become the decision makers, the coordinators, and the conflict resolvers. The So now let's go into the leadership or the organizational compensation part of it. So the communication channel, the governance process, that's not leadership. That's actually organizational compensation. And I'm not talking about that compensation. I'm talking about the organizational compensation. No organization should depend on extraordinary people doing extraordinary work every single day just to keep the business running. That is not resilience. It's a warning signal that system itself needs attention. So if coherence is the goal, So how do we build it? It isn't a universal blueprint. Every organization is different, every strategy is different, people are different, working methodologies are different. But there are some principles that consistently show up. So over the years, I've noticed that four characteristics that consistently separate organizations that perform well under pressure for those who struggle. The first is clarity of decision right. Think about how many times the meeting exists simply because nobody is sure of who owns the decision. The ownership is clear. Organization just don't become uh, faster when the ownership is clear. They become more confident. The second is the governance that enables the execution. Good governance isn't bureaucracy; it's clarity. So people should understand the boundaries within which they make decisions without having to ask for permission at every single step. The third is designing around capabilities rather than departments. Customers don't experience the HR, finance, IT, or backend operations in isolation. They experience one big organization, the best organization designed around capability required to deliver value, not around functional silos. And finally, organization needs stability as much as they need change. So, we spend a lot of time talking about transformation, but not everything should change at the same time. Right? Purpose should remain stable, governance should remain stable, and those become the anchors which allow the organization to adapt without losing coherence. And when those elements become together, something changes. Decision moves closer to where the work happens. Leaders spend more time resolving conflicts. Team collaborate more naturally. Performance improves because the system is doing more of the work instead of relying on heroic individuals. That is what coherence looks like in practice. Now, let me leave you with some questions we started with. So, how do you know whether an organization is truly well designed? Um, I, th- I don't think you can find the answer when everything is running smoothly. You will actually discover it when organization comes under pressure. That's when decision making is tested. That is when governance is tested. That is when trust is tested, and ultimately that's when organizational design is tested. Pressure doesn't create the weakness. Pressure actually uh, relieves them into how the operating model or the entire business operating model is functioning. As leaders are in instinct, so as leaders, our instincts is often to ask people to work harder, collaborate more, communicate better, become more resilient, and those things matter. But they rarely solve the underlying problem of the organization itself by creating unnecessary complexity. Um, it's it's about removing unnecessary complexity wherever it is possible. So how do we become faster is not the is not perhaps the right question. So I mean, how do we become more coherent is the more relevant question we need to ask our teams, and we need to ask the 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 management of the organization. Because when strategy, governance, decision making, capabilities, and the culture move together, speed becomes the outcome, it does not become your objective. So, as artificial intelligence accelerates change, Organization continue to transform. And while they are transforming, uncertainty becomes the norm rather than becoming the exception. I believe organization that succeed won't simply be the ones that react very faster. They will be the ones who remain more coherent while everything around them is changing. So I encourage you to leave so I encourage everyone to leave today with one question: where is unnecessary complexity preventing your organizations from performing at its best? Because every layer of unnecessary complexity you remove creates more space for better decision, stronger collaboration, and more sustainable performance. Uh, Thank you so much. And um, Matt can join me and we can have the questions.
Thank you so much, Hassan. Lots in there. I think we have a question from the audience, so we're going to bring that up and we'll go straight to that one. So, as you can see there, the success of this requires changing hearts and minds. How do you actually get disparate, fragmented leaders at the top to buy into such a shift when politics are so rampant and they're so removed? Have you got any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, this is an excellent question, and honestly, it's one of the most likely ones you'll get when you talk about coherence and agility and governance and everything. So I actually don't think you start by trying to change the hearts and minds. That's often where organization gets stuck. You start by changing the conversations from within the management. Instead of asking the leaders to support the organizational design, help them see the business impact of the fragmentation. Show them where decision is delayed, where the accountability is unclear, or the where the work is duplicated, and where leadership time is being consumed by unnecessary escalations, right? So looking at the value which the leadership are supposed to bring to an organization, is that value being output in the organization? So when leaders recognize that, let's say, fragmentation is affecting performance, alignment becomes much more easier, because you're solving a business problem and not selling and HR initiatives. And one other thing, in my experience, politics often flourishes when decision rights are unclear, governance is inconsistent, or accountability overlaps. People begin negotiating, influence becomes part of the system, which itself isn't providing enough clarity. So once the leaders align on those principles, you no longer rely on personalities to make the organization work. You actually rely on the system. You actually rely on the operating model.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. In my welcome speech at the various ceremonies around the world the past few months, I've talked about those leaders that take their time and don't keep moving with the next technology. So talking about AI, that will win out because they'll be protecting their people and their organization from just constantly shifting from one new strategy or technology to the other. And I loved how you said we've equated speed with effectiveness, and bringing in the proliferation of AI and everybody running to work out how it could best be utilized. That's obviously just turbocharged that whole false premise that speed is effective.
Yeah.
For those that are struggling with that pressure to do something or to be seen to doing something, even if it might not be the right thing to do right now, talking about bringing a coherent strategy together for an organization, what's the best way of just helping them to tell their leadership to press pause? I know obviously the whole talk you've just done is around coherence, but what are good tools for people to go stand back, just wait, pause?
I actually don't think that the answer is, simply asking leaders to, pause more. So leaders would love to pause, but the organization doesn't give them time, or doesn't give them luxury to pause. So in my experience, leaders don't struggle regarding technology, or because the technology moving too fast. They're struggling because they carry too much of the organization's complexity. Everyone, every escalation lands on their desk. Every difficult decision comes back to them. Every priority complies for their attention. So before we ask leaders to actually slow down, I can ask a different question to them: is that how can we remove from the systems uh, those complexities, so leaders have space to think? Think of it as a pyramid structure. So on top you have strategy, in the middle you have employee advocacy, and at the end you have problem solving. Now flip the pyramid. If your strategy goes up, and all of the other things are managed by the system, think how much time the leaders have to actually work on strategy, or actually look into more strategic work, rather than just looking into operational difficulties, or operational complexities. So I mean, don't I mean we just can't ask leader to purpose, give them an organization or an operating model that allows them to think on a broader aspect, not just the day-to-day operational part.
Thank you. And just probably the last question for me, and this is more from the audience, but I loved the things you presented, and one of the elements I hadn't heard about before was organizational debt, and then you had a list of those debts, the type of debt that the organization can accrue. Is there one type of debt that's more damaging than the other? So cultural debt or process debt? You had a number there, and I wondered if there was a few of them that you'd want to avoid more than any other.
If you want me to answer openly, a debt is a debt. They're all damaging wherever it comes from. This is the
No, it's great, especially if they're compounding on a daily basis.
Yeah. So what happens is that, let's talk about decision debt. So it slows execution, it creates accountability gaps, it increases the leadership overload, which then connects to your organizational debt, which then connects to your trust debt, which then connects to your other debts as well. So they are all interconnected to each other. The only way is that once we are developing an organization, or once we are growing into a more practical organization, we have to look at it from an angle that, that what is our operating model. So our operating model will define how the business would run, and that would give leaders, that would give line managers, and that will even give your support line an idea of what is expected out of them. So you have the support layer, you have the tactical layer, you have the managerial layer, and then you have the leadership layer. Every single layer will then be synced into one operating model for the organization. And the operating model is not necessarily constant. They will evolve, they will change. New technology will come, new softwares will come, titles will change, roles will change. Some roles will get obsolete. So some new roles will take their places.
Fantastic. Well, I think that answer has created another question from the crowd. So see if we haven't answered that already. But my question is, and obviously an excellent session, which I totally agree with. But my question is, when an organization in an organizational debt situation, what is the one thing each department should not start from or avoid, or how should we start?
That's an excellent question, and I could give just one piece of advice. That would be: don't start by redesigning the organization. start by understanding the work. One of the biggest mistakes organizations make is jumping straight into restructuring, changing the reporting lines or creating new departments or, changing managers. But if you haven't understood the workflow, how decisions are made, or where the value is created, you're simply moving boxes on the organizational chart. So I always encourage leaders to begin by asking, three simple questions. Where does work consistently get stuck? It's a process. What decisions are repeatedly escalated? Governance. Where are people creating workarounds just to get things done? Right? So those are usually the symptoms of what we call as an organizational debt. So once you understand those patterns, and you can redesign the organization to support the work, are not just expecting people to adapt to a structure that isn't already working.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much, Hassan. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish the session?
No, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope I was inspiring enough. I couldn't match the speed of Dr. Tracy, but I tried to do.
No, you were absolutely fantastic, and we're very different sessions in brilliant ways. So I'm super grateful for your time and lending your expertise to the summer series. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Brilliant. Well, look, that's our first day done. As quickly as it arrived, it's finished. Thank you so much to Dr. Tracy Brower and Hassan Tirmizi. Amazing sessions in their varied content. And we'll be back, obviously, again tomorrow. Tracy mentioned something at the beginning. I'd quite like to echo that, really. To two special team members, Amy O'Leary and Marta Muir, who just do so much for the Inspiring Workplaces group all year round in many different ways, and are very much the unsung heroes of Inspiring Workplaces and everything we do for our award winners, both in Inspiring Workplaces, Certified People First, and leaders, and all of the content that we pull together and the community that we hopefully work with. So just want to say a heartfelt, massive thank you to both Amy and Marta. You're both incredible, amazing, and very grateful that I have the opportunity to work with you on a daily basis. So having said that, we'll be back tomorrow. So thanks everybody for listening, and 2 more amazing storytellers to follow in 23 hours and 2 minutes. So see you soon. Take care.